Hello everyone and welcome. In this video, I'm going to teach you everything you need to know about HTML forms. We're going to be creating an HTML form that allows the user to order a pizza based on their preferences. Now, before we start, I would kindly ask you to subscribe and like the video to support the channel. Thank you so much, and let's get right into it. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to create an H1. It's going to say order your pizza, like so. And now let's actually create our form. So let me type form. This is going to automatically give me this action attribute. I'm going to delete that for now and explain it later. And inside of my form tag, I'm going to put everything that's inside of our form. So I can start, for example, with an input. So an input, as the name indicates, allows the user to input something. And this input can have numerous different types. The type of this input is going to be text because I want the user to input their name. And like the name says, this allows me to enter plain text into my input tab. Now in here, I'm also going to create a label above my input, and this is going to have an attribute called for. Now this is going to be basically the unique identifier of the input that's going to tell the program which input this label is for. So let's create an ID here for my input. Let's call this name. And this is going to be the keyword that's going to be the unique identifier of this input. And let's say that this label is going to be for name. And now let's say enter your name, like so. And now this is going to have a label, enter your name, and then an input box that allows me to enter my name. Okay, now I can also add something called a name. Okay, getting a little bit repetitive with the name, but basically the name attribute is where your data is going to be stored when you submit the form. So basically think of this as a variable. Now, another thing that we can have is a placeholder, and this is going to be, well, a placeholder. So I can type robot here, it's going to appear here, robot, and if I type something else, like hello, this is going to be overwritten. Okay, now let's go here, let me add a line break, like so. The line break is basically going to add an empty paragraph in between my inputs so that I can have everything a little bit more tidied up and spaced out. And I'm going to create another input. This time, it's going to be of type number. Let's give this an ID of age, and I'm going to ask the user to input their age. I'm going to say label, this is going to be for age, and here I'm going to say enter your age. And as you can see, this is going to allow me to input numbers. Now, as you can see as well, we can go down to the negative numbers. Now, obviously, I don't want this to happen since this is an age. So I'm going to have a min attribute in here, which is going to be 18. So now if I try to go down, notice that it doesn't let me go further down than 18. Now, notice that even though I added a line break between my inputs, they're still kind of like smushed together. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put both of my inputs inside of a div. Let me just do that, and I'll explain what this does in just a moment. I'm going to put the closing tag here. I'm going to indent this, and I'm going to do the same thing down here. Let me say div. Okay, so the div is not going to have any semantic value, but it's basically going to allow you to organize your code into divisions. In fact, that's what div stands for. And inside of here, I can also have this class attribute, which is going to be like the identifier of this div. So I can say that this div is of class, name, like this. And this div is going to be of class age. And also, when I have my CSS file and I actually start adding styles to my HTML, I can refer to this class name and class age as identifiers for these divs and give them different styles in my CSS. Now, don't worry if you didn't understand that yet. You don't really need to since you don't know CSS. Let's just continue. Now I'm going to add a button here, which is going to be my submit button. Let's say submit, like so. Now I'm also going to put this inside of a div. So I'm going to say div. Let me grab here the closing tag, and I'm going to paste it down here like so. And let me just indent this. And I'm going to give this a class of submit, like so. Now the button can have this onClick attribute, which is going to contain a function that's going to be executed when I click on my submit button. Now, of course, we're not going to have anything like that since we don't have a JavaScript file or any backend whatsoever. But for example, you could try to redirect the user to another page when they click on this button, and you could call a function called redirect, which would do that for you. Now, of course, we don't have that one more time, but let's just pretend. And let me add a line break here. Now, the next thing I want to show you is going to be a password. Now, I'm going to create here a div. It's going to have a class of password. And in here, I'm going to create an input. This type is going to be password as well. The ID is going to be password, like so. The name is going to be password. And I'm going to add here a Boolean value, which is going to be an attribute called required. So this is going to tell the program that we are required to provide a password, and we cannot submit this form without a password. Let me actually zoom this out a little bit. And here, let me create a label. I'm going to say that this is for password. And here I'm going to say enter your password, like so. And as you can see, let me just add here a line break, like so. As you can see, now when I type inside of this password, this is going to hide what I'm typing by these dots. So that's going to be a password. And let's actually say that this is, oh, I already said it was required. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to show you is we're actually going to add toppings and preferences to our pizza. So I'm going to put all of this inside of a div. I'm going to say div here. This is going to be class personal data, like so. I'm going to grab this ending div and I'm going to paste it down here. And I'm going to grab all of this and indent it, like so. Sorry for the confusion. And up here, I'm going to say, I'm going to add an h3 tag called personal data, like so. And now I'm going to create here another div, like so. This is going to be class preferences. And in here, I'm going to create another h3, which is going to say your pizza preferences, like so. And now let's actually add our preferences here. So first, I'm going to add a div, which is going to be a class of extras, like so. Oops, extras, like so. And in here, I'm going to create an input. Now, this input is going to be of type checkbox, like so. The ID is going to be cheese. The name is going to be cheese. And okay, I think that's enough. Now, let me say here the label. This is going to be for cheese. And it's going to say extra cheese, like so. And this is going to add an input box that's going to say extra cheese. And if I click on it, it's going to be checked, marked. Okay, let me just add here a line break. And now let me add another input here. Let me actually go here and do that below this. I'm going to add a label. This is going to be for sauce. And I'm going to say sauce here. And I'm going to add another input. The input is going to be of type checkbox as well. And the ID is going to be sauce. And this is going to allow me to tick and untick sauce. Okay, now the last thing I want to show you is going to be the select. So I'm going to add here a div. The class here is going to be, let me think, it's going to be topping, or actually it's going to be pizza type, like so. And here I'm going to create a select, like so. Now the select is going to be called topping, and here it's going to be topping as well. And inside of here, I can create different options that the user can select. So I'm going to say option, and I'm actually going to copy this, and I'm going to paste it right here and right here. We're going to have three options. Let me delete this attribute right here. I don't need it. And now let's actually create some options for our user. So I'm going to say, for example, meat. Then I'm going to say, for example, pepperoni. Is that how you write that? Probably not. I'm sorry for the spelling mistakes here. And the next one is going to be sausage, like so. And this is going to create, actually, let me just add a line break. This is going to create here this option selection that allows me to put what kind of meat I want or what kind of protein I want in my pizza. And let's actually add a label here. And this is going to be for topping. And this is going to say, choose your topping, like so. Okay, so I think that's all we need for our form. Let's actually provide some input here on our fields. I'm going to say Mike. Oops, I clicked enter and submitted the form. It's going to say, please fill out this field because I said my password is going to be required. Anyways, let's input 19 here, something random for the password. Let's say we want extra cheese. I'm going to choose pepperoni here, my favorite. I'm going to submit. And as you can see, nothing really happened, right? Because we don't have a backend going on and we don't have anywhere we're sending this data to. Now, in case you actually wanted to do that, you would go up here to your form tag, and we can define a few attributes here that are going to handle how our data is going to be submitted. So first, we have this action here, and this is going to contain the page to where we're going to send our data. So for example, if we have a PHP page called action, and we want to send our data there when we submit this form, we're going to say action is going to be equal to myPageAction.php. Now the next thing is going to be the method. So the method is going to be basically the HTTP method that you're going to use when submitting this form. Now, if you don't know what that is, don't worry about this, but basically this can be either get or post. Now, get is like an insecure way of parsing your data. So for example, if I type here Mike and I say 19 and my password is going to be like something random and I submit this, let me make this big. Well, first of all, it's going to say cannot get action.php, obviously because that file does not exist. And now notice that in my URL, my data was appended at the end here. It's going to say name Mike, and the password is going to be whatever I typed and topping, and basically my data is going to be appended to my URL. Now you can probably see why this is not the most secure way to do this, especially when you have passwords and other data that should be encrypted. So in order to have a secure submission of my data, I'm going to say that the method is going to be post. Let me refresh this. I'm going to say Mike 19, random password here. Let me submit this. And when I submit, notice that my URL is unchanged other than action.php, which obviously doesn't exist, and therefore this page is not going to be working. So as you can see, post is going to be a much more secure way of sending our data. Okay, so I think that's all we needed for our form. Now, of course, there are plenty of other input types that you can use. There's, for example, time, date, date time, what else? And yeah, nothing else comes to mind, but there are a bunch of input types that you can use, and you can do a little bit of research on your own to search all of those different types. But these are probably the ones you're going to use the most, right? Text, number, password, probably the ones you're going to be using the most. So thank you so much for watching. I'm really happy with how this turned out, considering we weren't using CSS. But I hope you liked it as well. I hope you learned a lot. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.